Hello, my name's Katie Cotton and this is my book, The Secret of Splint Hall, and today I've been asked to do a short reading from it for you. So this is the story of a girl called Isobel and her sister Flora, who go off to stay in this very large grand house. They go to stay with their Auntie B, to live with her after the war, after losing their home in a bombing raid, and the story is all about what happens when they get there. And this reading is taken from the very beginning of the book. So, chapter 1. Mum said the war was over, but Isobel thought that it was not. She could see it in the tight lips of the women as they queued to buy sugar, butter and bacon. She could feel it in the dust from the rubble that used to be kitchens and bedrooms, but now were nothing at all. That was what had happened to their house. One evening it was there, the next morning it wasn't. It had become a pile of rocks, like something you walked over to get home in a storybook. But they didn't have a home to get to anymore. They were the lucky ones, Mum had said, holding Isobel's hand too tight. They'd been in the shelter when it happened. Not like Mrs Potts and her children, Sammy and Kit from number 48. Isobel knew that they were the lucky ones, but she hadn't felt very lucky at the time. Most of all, the war was in the eyes of the men that had come back. Or it was in what wasn't in them, like a light had gone out. How they looked without seeing, like they were miles away. She had said that to Flora, but Flora said she didn't know what she was talking about, and she should be quiet and stop looking at people anyway. Nosy Parker. Isobel thought that maybe Daddy would have looked like that if he'd come back from the war. She wanted to ask Flora about it, but she'd only get cross and tell her to stop talking about him. They'd known he wasn't going to come back ever since the boy came with a telegram that had made Mum bend right over like she was going to be sick. The boy, who hadn't looked much older than Flora, had patted Mum awkwardly on the back, then turned red, like he wasn't sure he should have done that. Then he'd left, and Flora had taken Isobel's hand, and they'd gone upstairs and huddled under the covers and read The Little Prince until Mum knocked on the door. Isobel thought that Daddy not coming back was the reason they were going to Auntie B's. It was either that or because their house wasn't there anymore, and they were living with their neighbour, Mrs Dooley, who sniffed loudly if you banged a door by mistake. Or maybe it was both. Mum called it a new start, in the country. Isobel knew that some children had been sent to the country during the war. It was children in the city that were sent there, and Mum had said they didn't live in the city or the country. They lived in a town, so they could stay where they were all together and be safe. Which they were, Isobel supposed, until their house had got bombed. So, Isobel and Flora are there on their way to Splint Hall, where the adventure of a lifetime awaits. So I really hope that you enjoyed the reading. I hope that you enjoy the book if you're reading it. Thanks very much for listening.